Take a quick pause. Did you know that over 90% of you watching haven't hit the subscribe button yet? If you're enjoying this video, take a second to subscribe and hit the like button. It helps us bring you more gripping stories every day. Also, we'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments so we can see how far our stories are reaching. Your support really keeps us going. Now, let's jump back into the video. I wasn't supposed to be home until Thursday. That thought repeated in my head like a broken record as I stood frozen in the hallway of my own house, suitcase still in hand, staring at the sliver of light beneath the half-closed bedroom door. I had taken the red-eye back from Chicago, hoping to surprise my wife, Melanie. We'd been married for 12 years, 2 beautiful kids, a house we built together from the ground up. I thought everything was solid, stable, predictable. What I heard from that bedroom shattered that illusion. Muffled laughter, a voice that wasn't mine, lower, unfamiliar, casual, like he belonged. Then her voice, breathy, soft, saying things I hadn't heard in years, things I once thought were mine alone. I didn't burst in, I didn't scream, I didn't even speak. My body moved with a purpose I didn't recognize, quiet, mechanical, deliberate. I set the suitcase down and pulled out my phone. I pressed record and pushed the door open an inch more. Enough to catch the bed in frame, enough to capture everything. There they were, my wife and a man I'd never seen before. Our sheets, our room, the photos of our children in the background, smiling. It was like my heart cracked without a sound. No rage, not then, just silence. Cold, eerie silence in my chest, like a winter wind had swept through me and frozen everything. I stepped back and left the door ajar. No one heard me. They were too engrossed in their betrayal. I went to the guest room, locked the door behind me, and sat on the edge of the bed. I watched the video, then I watched it again. My hand didn't even tremble. I was too far gone for that. A strange calm had taken over. I wasn't going to confront her tonight. I was going to destroy her. The next morning, I left before sunrise. I knew the routine. She'd take the kids to school and go to her yoga class. I had access to our shared cloud account and quickly discovered something that shifted my plan into something darker. Dozens of videos and photos, not just with that man, several different locations, hotel rooms, our own house. The timeline stretched back years. I couldn't breathe. I sat there in my parked car for what felt like an hour, replaying every moment in our marriage, trying to pinpoint the day everything changed. Our second child, the timing, the sudden distance, her refusal for intimacy, the way she started texting late at night. I thought she was just tired, overworked. I blamed myself. But I wasn't the problem. I started gathering everything. I backed up all her messages, screenshots, locations, photos. I spoke to a lawyer under the guise of a hypothetical scenario. The lawyer was blunt. If you can prove infidelity, false paternity, and financial misconduct, you'll have the upper hand in every way. False paternity. I hadn't let myself go there until that moment. It took one discrete test. I sent in the samples from both kids and myself. When the results came back, I stared at the paper, unable to move. My son, mine, my daughter, another man's. Melanie had lied to me for 7 years. That night, I came home and played the part. I smiled, I kissed her cheek, I read stories to the kids. But something had shifted. She didn't notice. She had no idea her life was about to unravel. Over the next 2 weeks, I set the pieces in motion. I rented a secure storage unit where I kept printed evidence, hard drives, USB backups. I opened a separate bank account. I moved half my direct deposits. I talked to a private investigator, and he gave me even more than I expected. Photos of her with the man I saw in our bedroom, plus others. Dates, times, receipts. She wasn't just unfaithful, she was living a double life. She had 2 phones, multiple social accounts, secret credit cards. She was sending money to someone, possibly one of the men. I felt like I was going mad. Every truth I had held dear was now a lie. But I didn't lose control. I didn't raise my voice. I became a ghost in my own home, silent and strategic. And then I made the decision that would seal everything. I called our family therapist and scheduled a check-in session. Melanie was surprised but played along. She always liked looking like the cooperative, emotionally evolved partner, but she didn't know what I had planned. In that session, I asked the therapist in front of Melanie, How do you rebuild trust when you find out the person you love has been lying to you for years? Her face stiffened. What are you talking about? I know, I said. Calm, cold, everything. The therapist's eyes widened. Melanie turned pale. I have photos, videos, bank statements, messages, a paternity test. You want to see them? She gasped. You tested the kids? I tested my daughter because I had to. And guess what, Melanie? She's not mine. The room cracked open with silence, so thick it choked us. Melanie burst into tears, pleading, but I wasn't moved. I wasn't there to understand her. I was there to make her realize she had finally lost control. I walked out. That night, I filed for divorce. The next morning, I served her the papers at her workplace. I didn't want a confrontation at home in front of the kids. Then I sent copies of the evidence, nothing explicit, just enough, to my lawyer, my closest friends, and discreetly her parents. Melanie called over and over. She emailed. She begged. She even tried to play the victim. But she didn't realize something. The man she betrayed was gone. The man she used to lie to, gaslight, manipulate. He had died the moment she chose someone else in our bed. I was someone else now, and this new version of me was going to finish what he started. The days that followed felt surreal. The house was colder, quieter, not just in sound, but in presence. Melanie still lived under the same roof for the time being. California has rules about separation before finalizing a divorce. But it wasn't a home anymore. It was a battlefield in disguise. We passed each other in the hallway like strangers. She avoided eye contact. I didn't offer any. The kids knew something was off, but I did everything in my power to shield them. I woke up early to make their lunches, walked them to the bus stop, kept the routines intact. I wasn't going to let my pain become their burden, no matter how much it burned. At night, I slept in the guest room with the door locked. I kept the lights on not out of fear, but out of the strange sense that darkness might let all of this feel like a nightmare. In light, everything was real. Harsh, undeniable. Melanie tried several times to talk. At first, it was sobbing apologies. Then it shifted to anger. Accusations that I was being cruel, that I had violated her privacy. She didn't seem to grasp the gravity of what she'd done. Or maybe she did, and this was her defense mechanism, victimhood. I didn't engage. I didn't yell. Silence became my sword. Her guilt echoed louder when I said nothing. Then came the twist I hadn't expected. One evening, just before dinner, I got a message from an unknown number, a man named Caleb. The message was short. I think we need to talk. I didn't know she was married. I stared at the screen for a long time before responding. When we spoke later that night, his voice was tense but sincere. She told me she was separated, he said. Said you were emotionally distant, controlling. I never would have gone near her if I'd known the truth. I didn't speak. She showed me pictures of your kids, said they weren't yours. That line hit harder than I expected. I'd already known. But hearing it from a stranger felt like being punched by reality all over again. I'm sorry, he added. For what it's worth, I ended things with her weeks ago. She kept pushing. I started to feel like I wasn't the first. You weren't, I said. He sighed. You need to know something. There's a guy named Mason. She talked about him a lot. Said he's possibly your daughter's real father. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. I just thought you should know, Caleb added. That call cracked open another layer of betrayal I hadn't even fully processed yet. I had fixated on the cheating, the lies, the manipulation. But now the image of my daughter, sweet, bright-eyed, her entire world wrapped in bedtime stories, and her love of baking cookies, took over my thoughts. She didn't ask for this. And that's when I knew my revenge had to be more than legal. It had to be legacy level. Not destruction for destruction's sake, but exposure, clarity, unmasking. I hired a second investigator, this one specialized in digital forensics. He pulled data from Melanie's cloud backups, text records, deleted emails, and burner accounts I didn't even know she had. The picture was more twisted than I imagined. Melanie had maintained ongoing relationships with at least 3 men over the past 5 years. One of them, Mason, had been in contact around the time of my daughter's conception. There were messages referencing, "What if she's yours?" and vague talk of a life they could have had together. I stared at the screen, rage simmering just beneath the surface, but I refused to let it take me. I needed my head clear. I compiled everything, labeled folders, color-coded timelines. This wasn't just evidence, it was a timeline of my erasure, the slow theft of my dignity. I met with my lawyer again and presented it all. "This is airtight," she said, flipping through the documents. "You've been more thorough than most professionals I've worked with." "What are my options?" I asked. She explained that the evidence could allow me to petition for full custody of my son and request disavowal of paternity for my daughter, if I chose. Financially, I'd be protected. The court would see her deception, her manipulation, and long-term infidelity as not just morally bankrupt, but legally significant. But that last option, my daughter, I couldn't process it. She wasn't biologically mine. That fact hurt deeper than any cut. But she still called me dad. She still held my hand at the bus stop. She still looked for me in the audience at school events. I wasn't ready to let that go. Later that week, I asked Melanie to meet in the living room. She came in cautiously, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "I'm not here to fight," I said calmly. "I just want answers." She folded her arms. "You've already made up your mind. Just tell me the truth, all of it." There was a long pause. She sat down slowly, her face hollowed with regret or exhaustion, maybe both. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," she started. "I felt forgotten. You worked late. You were always tired. I needed to feel wanted." "You could have said something," I said. "I did. You didn't listen." I shook my head. "So your answer was to cheat? In our bed? While our children slept down the hall?" Her eyes dropped. She didn't answer. "And what about the lies? The second phones? The money transfers? The man you told was the father of our daughter?" Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't know for sure. I panicked. I told him what he wanted to hear. "And me?" "You were steady, safe. I didn't want to lose you." That line made my stomach turn. "You already lost me." She wept. And for a moment, I almost felt pity. But it passed. She hadn't cried for me. She cried for the life she was losing. I stood up. "The divorce moves forward. I'm filing for full custody of our son, and I'm still deciding what to do about our daughter. But know this, I won't let your chaos define her." "Please," she whispered, "don't take them away from me." "You should have thought about that before you buried this family under years of deceit." I walked out of the room. That night, I sat in silence, watching old videos of the kids when they were younger. Birthdays, first steps, little things that felt like lifetimes ago. I remembered how happy I had been, how much I'd believed in what we had. And then, slowly, I'd let go of that version of myself. Because he was gone. This new version, the one who rose from the ashes, he wasn't naive. He wasn't angry. He was awake. And soon the world would see the truth. The final weeks before the court date were a strange mix of calm and chaos. I moved with purpose, but carried the weight of what was left behind. My marriage had collapsed into ashes, but there was still something worth salvaging. My integrity, my relationship with the kids, and the future I was about to reclaim. Melanie, after our confrontation in the living room, seemed to alternate between denial and desperation. Some days, she tried to play the doting mother and remorseful wife, as if baking muffins and smiling through dinner could erase years of betrayal. Other days, she barely came out of her room and I heard muffled calls, probably to the same people who once enabled her web of lies. I stayed focused. I started therapy, not to fix myself, but to reinforce the parts of me she tried to break. I needed to understand how I could be so deeply deceived without seeing it. And more importantly, how to ensure I never let someone control my peace again. Meanwhile, my lawyer filed the motion for divorce and custody. The court accepted our petition to disestablish paternity for my daughter, pending DNA confirmation. I had mixed feelings about it, but I also knew the truth was better than a lifetime of lies. That decision didn't mean I'd walk away from her. If anything, it gave me the right to choose what kind of father I wanted to be, regardless of biology. When I sat my son down, I told him we were going through changes, but he'd always be safe and loved. His eyes widened with fear, the kind only a child understands when his foundation begins to shake. Am I going to live with you? He asked. I smiled gently. Yes, and you'll see Mom too, but I'm going to make sure you're okay first. He nodded, trusting, unaware of the storm swirling just out of sight. My daughter was harder. She was older, 10 years old, bright, perceptive, and full of questions. Is it true? She asked one night, voice trembling, that you might not be my real dad? I knelt down beside her. Blood doesn't make someone your dad. Love does. I've held your hand since the day you were born. I was the one who stayed up with you when you were sick, helped with your school projects, watched your ballet recitals. None of that changes. She started to cry. I held her, and for the first time in weeks, I cried too. Not because I was broken, but because I realized I was strong enough to let the truth in without letting it ruin me. The court date arrived. Melanie showed up looking like a ghost of herself. Her makeup was carefully done, her clothes crisp, but none of it hid the fear in her eyes. She avoided looking at me, probably because she already knew what the judge would see when they reviewed the evidence. I had folders submitted in advance, communication logs, proof of infidelity, financial irregularities, testimonies from the investigator, even records of her attempts to manipulate the children into turning against me during the separation. My lawyer was confident, and she was right to be. The judge didn't take long. Custody of our son was awarded to me, with Melanie given supervised visitation until further review. The paternity issue was postponed, pending the results of the DNA test, which we'd agreed to keep private for the sake of the child. After the hearing, Melanie followed me into the hallway. You're really going to destroy everything? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I turned to her calmly. You destroyed it. I just uncovered what you tried to bury. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. But you did, for years. And now it's time to face that. Her eyes searched mine for a sign of softness, maybe for a doorway back into the life she once had. But that door had closed the moment I saw her in our bed with someone else. Maybe even before that. I walked away. Weeks passed. Life didn't return to normal, but it began forming a new rhythm. My son settled into our routines. School, weekend games, board game nights. My daughter stayed in touch often, sometimes visiting when it felt right. I never pushed. I just made sure she knew my love didn't vanish with a DNA test. I reconnected with old friends. I found joy in small things again. Morning coffee on the porch, books that had sat unread for years, music I used to play before the noise of marriage drowned it out. The investigator sent me one final file. It contained old footage. Dates and times of Melanie meeting different men in public, quiet handoffs at hotels, even messages where she bragged to one of them about how easily she could manipulate people's perception of her. I never opened that file, because I didn't need more proof. I didn't need more reasons to hate her. I had already let go. My dignity wasn't in destroying her, it was in choosing peace after the war. Months later, I stood in front of the house that once held so many memories, good and bad. I had put it up for sale. It was time to start fresh, somewhere without ghosts in every hallway. As I locked the front door for the last time, I didn't feel loss. I felt light. People often say revenge is best served cold, but I disagree. Real revenge is living well. It's rebuilding a life they no longer have access to. It's waking up each day knowing you faced the worst and still found purpose. Melanie texted me once, long after everything was finalized. Just one sentence. Was it all really worth it? I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, yes. Because now I finally see myself clearly. And I never heard from her again. In the end, I wasn't a victim of her lies. I was a survivor of them, and that made all the difference.